Hey everybody, you're listening into Burst GWAC TMD from Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome to episode 16 of the real-time web series. In the studio we continue to unfold the story of graffiti in New Zealand, and representing Christchurch scene yet again, we have none other than Freak DTR, also known under the artist name Wongi. Welcome, man.
Yeah, cheers brother, thank you.
So for the people tuning in for the first time, the real-time web series is an in-depth process video meets podcast. So I basically document the visual process, you ask the questions online, and our artist gives you the answers. And we basically, from scratch, start building the knowledge base around New Zealand graffiti. So kicking straight into the episode, so when did you first start writing?
It would have been primary school. I had a friend that lived across the street, and so he had older brothers and sisters, and so they had a lot of gang tags. So it was all gang tag stuff that really kind of just was the first touch with it, like kind of just seeing the letter forms and everything. So that was kind of where it started, and I just tried pen stuff on books, schools, desktops, buses, things like that. And then probably wasn't until like the second year in intermediate when I tried to paint a proper piece of some sort. So yeah.
So were they just doing tagging back then, or were they actually trying to do pieces?
Nah, they were just doing tags. So like, a lot of just tags, the whole silhouettes. So they'd stand in a pose and have the shadow hitting against the fence, and then somebody else would sketch around that shadow. So there was the silhouette sketch of a person, and then there's tag and stuff. So there was like old school tags like Scheme and Wonder Boy and really cool things like that.
So what year was that?
Mid-90s times. I'm horrible with my accurate assessment of that time frame, but yeah.
So how did you select the name Freak?
Yeah, so it's random. Like it's one of those things where I thought that nobody else would choose this name, but it's kind of one of those names that almost, like a lot of people just, pick up, so at that time, it was the 90s, and there was a lot of hip hop with that word in it, and I just remember thinking, it's different. No one's really gonna be calling themselves that. So that's kind of where I went with that.
Have you written any other names alongside that?
Yeah, I had a whole bunch of different random names before that. Yeah, just really weird ones. Like there was this, like not even a proper word, like Mortz. It was like MORTZ, and long backstory with that one. But a whole bunch of my boys and everything, and we did a mission and came up on some Moritz bloody ice creams and things. It was really random, just really, really, really random. So before I really properly got into it.
So you mentioned kind of briefly just then that you've seen some of your friends doing some tags. So at what point did you get into your piecing?
Yeah.
Or bombing?
Yeah. That would have been, definitely more intermediate, beginning of high school type thing. So, all before that, I was just really young and trying to get into it, but just didn't really understand it, I guess, like the effort people went into to get up and everything like that. So, I ended up just coming across some cans and painting a random wall opposite my mate's house. So that was my first touch with it, but then it probably wasn't really until I touched base with Icarus when I really started to develop more, because I had someone to actually feed off, and things like that, so we catching up with, it's always better having a group of people that are similar minded in that fashion, so that always helps push, you're always pushing in that direction when feeding off each other and all that.
So what's the story behind Meeting Icarus?
It's just, I don't even know when or where exactly. Like back in the day, like when we'd go to town and we'd drink around in town, and like it was just random. Like there'd just be a whole crew of us that were just, I want to say vagrants, but not really vagrants. We'd just hang around town and drink, and like we wouldn't go clubbing. We'd just go to town and just get on it. And it's just kind of just, there was just a whole massive group like that, and it just kind of connected and mingled through that, I think, just kind of, just, through jungle as well, and other peeps like that. So, I can't even pinpoint the exact time or anything, but yeah, very weird.
Are you a part of any crews?
Yeah, DTR crew, yep.
So what does that stand for?
It used to stand for like destroying toy riders and things like that, destined to rule, destined to rise. But I think with age and maturity, we're a different generation now, so we're dreams to reality, desire, talent, respect, things like that, so a bit more positive, uplifting things. Yeah.
So how did DTR actually begin, and who's in that group?
It began like 90s, and there was heaps of people in it originally. Ix was the founder, from my knowledge anyway. So he created it, and like heaps of people ended up being on it. It was quite a big clique, but then other cliques evolved from that, and people went off into those other cliques apparently, and then it ended up just being left with a handful of writers, and then it kind of just whittled down to just like the main Christchurch prominent writers like myself and Icarus and Dci really, and Jungle as well. So to a lesser extent, because he doesn't paint as much as he should do. But so that's kind of, I think that's pretty much where it's at now. Really, we're probably the ones that put it up.
So what type of crew is DTR?
I wouldn't say we're bombing crew. We don't bomb too much these days. Not me specifically anyway. I guess we kind of really got our footing in productions, like full scale productions with pieces, characters, backgrounds, and all that. So that kind of really, it gave us some good ground. It kind of pushed us in a really good direction. We were happy with where things were going. So I really kind of think that's probably where a fair amount of our grounding is, in productions, So yeah.
I definitely feel, as an outsider looking in, from Auckland, I've always felt that DTR has had a stronghold on that kind of level of production, and it takes a certain, type of people to come together to be able to do something like that on that caliber, which is what you guys have proved on many levels.
Yeah, no, cheers, dude. Yeah, no, we're really good in a team situation like that. We're really good at feeding off each other. Kind of just we've got this really weird just majority rules type thing, So if we're like majority of our best rules are just on the fly, We'll turn up, piece, character, and just all kind of just try and create something from that. So but yeah, as I was saying, we have this majority rule thing. So if someone's got an idea that they think's dope, and they try and pitch it to one of the others, and if they're not so keen on it, you just try and pitch it to the other guy, So if you can get at least one of the other peeps on your side about that's a good idea, we should try that, then so yeah, we're really good. We play that off each other though. So
is it difficult working with the people in your crew to paint these productions? Like, is there quite a lot of ego involved, or do you guys put that aside when you're working on a production?
I mean, I guess there's a fair amount of ego, but it doesn't get in our way, We use it as banter, like we're always just, having a good laugh, and we're not afraid to, shut someone's idea down if we're not the biggest fan of it, as long as we've got something else to put forward for it, So no, there's there can't be any issues like that. You can't be in that situation. You can't be worried about what somebody else is going to think or what their reaction is to your response of their idea. It's just, it's all a big mixing pot. You just throw out your idea, and if it sticks, if people are going with it, then you just roll, and if it doesn't, then tuck it away for the next one or something. So
and so looking kind of more broadly at DTR as a whole, how important has it actually been for you to be a part of that crew?
Yeah, it's been actually pretty important for me. I think quite substantial in just my process. I think as well, just being able to, like I said, just having other people, like-minded people to feed off and work with, and
so important, eh?
Yeah, really, really good. Helps push each other, you you learn things off each other, Like I still remember things that I saw Guy and Dci doing, and Ix, and so it's all a learning curve, You always gotta. It's always great when you have people like that to learn off as well, It's a much harder process when you're by yourself, just trying to chip it out.
What would you say has been, so far, one of your greatest kind of graffiti achievements?
I'd have to say the self-portraits in the Canterbury Museum for the Rise exhibition. So so like 6 foot, 7 foot high photorealistic portraits of myself and Icarus that I painted in the Canterbury Museum, which have turned into permanent pieces for them now. So
wow, so that's permanent now.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, So we're pretty lucky to have that. So they're covered up by curtains a fair amount of the time, but they're permanently there, and they unveil them every so often. And I'm sure eventually, they'll have some amazing exhibition where they get to pull them all out again. And
So what would you say is a really memorable moment of Christchurch graffiti when you first started?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. So there's a couple of points that I'm thinking on now. But originally for myself, I remember being really young, and there was this bridge out in Ferrymead Ways, and so underneath this bridge, so I would have been not even 10 or maybe 10ish or something when I first saw it, and it was the Ghostbusters movie symbol, like the Ghostbusters symbol, and someone had painted it under this bridge, and it was immaculate, it looked exactly like it. And I remember seeing it and spinning out on it like we were out there for some family fair, so I was some kid and I saw it, and it was amazing. And that really stuck in my mind. And the weird thing about that, not that it stuck, but how generations later, the same Christchurch crew of different, writers and everything, we're sitting around and mingling and discussing, and we all remember that Ghostbusters symbol. We all saw it, and it all really sunk in, So that was a big piece, I think, for a lot of graffiti writers from Christchurch in my generation. It was just such a big shock and awe thing, and to this day none of us know who the hell painted it or anything.
Oh, nobody knows who painted it?
No one knows, because we were all young, way too young to even get it, so, but it stuck, so.
Okay, moving on to kind of setting the scene in terms of a little bit about Christchurch and opening up people's understanding about what the scene is here. So kind of when you began and kind of into the early 2000s, what was the graffiti scene like here in Christchurch?
It was actually really good, man. There was quite a lot of crews, a lot of different people, a lot of people painting. There was a spot down by the train tracks where it was just a really good spot. You could go down there every weekend and someone was painting, or if you weren't painting, somebody else was painting. You could just go hang out and stuff like that. It was a pretty good scene, good bunch of people, not really much beef. Everyone kind of, it's kind of like that in New Zealand in general. I think we're too small of a place for too much of that beef, but specifically in Christchurch as well. Like it's a small city, so and everyone knows everybody. So it was good. Everyone would get along and just jam. That was cool.
Were there quite a lot of pieces or more bombing or?
Yeah, there was still a fair amount of bombing. Yeah, definitely, but a lot more pieces as well. That was probably pre-production, so that was kind of at that period we're probably just doing pieces on walls, not even buffing the background, just going straight over whatever was there. And so we just grew from that, so then we started buffing walls, and it's just like, oh wow, that looks clean, look at that, oh yeah, and then we just grew from that, we'd put a character in it, and then we just kept steamrolling,
So what actually motivated you guys to start doing productions? Because once again, coming back to this idea that it takes a certain type of or group of people to decide to actually go in that direction and be a bit more organized, and what actually motivated you guys to do that?
Yeah, I think it was just a realization on all of our accounts as a crew, like just like for myself, I know there was like this one character, we were all just jamming, painting away at the same train tracks, and I ended up I wanted to paint this Incredible Hulk, and he came out mean. Like I painted this Hulk and he was huge and he looked just like the comic book did, and that was a big it wasn't as big a shock because I obviously thought I must have been able to do it, that's why I attempted it, but actually completing it was really amazing. And I think that kind of just set the scene for the others as well, like because from that I did this massive apocalypse as well, and it kind of just it's just set things up, because Icarus and Decipher are really solid with the lettering and everything like that, and obviously I'm really good with my characters, so that kind of just easily formatted well, piece, character, piece, and then from that, we just grew, like we'd finish the character and the pieces, and then we're like, okay, what can we do more, and then we'd try and think of a background that matched the character, and trying to create the pieces in some way for that, like if it's a foreground image of some sort or an object in the piece's hand, like, so it just kind of boils down to trying to create a world within the wall for the pieces to be sitting in, so there's a character and pieces and it's a whole different scene, so yeah.
Were there many other people painting characters at that time?
Not a lot, really, not to the extent that I was doing it. There was people that had specific characters of their own type thing, where, they're quite well known for, a specific kind of cartoony type character. But not really to that extent, I don't think. Yeah.
When you kind of first began Graph here in Christchurch, who were the top 3 writers?
Lurk, for sure. this stuff was up everywhere forever. And Jungle and Poru, they were the other two. Like their tags were the All City King tags were just everywhere and anywhere. Like yeah, I'd seen them and I knew the tags before I even met Jungle and all that, you know. So yeah, easily Jungle. Yeah, they would be my top three. Jungle and Poru tags everywhere.
What was that second person?
Paru.
How do you spell that?
Paru. So yeah. So Paru, yeah, Blackie. Yeah.
Okay. Did you see any kind of overlap between graffiti and hip hop?
Yeah.
Was there a hip hop scene down here?
Yeah. There was. I think because like for myself, like, you know, big into hip hop, grew up on hip hop, you know. So I always thought that was where graph came from. It wasn't until much later that I realized there was, you know, a whole lot of, you know, there's rockers and punk graphers, you know, and like being from Christchurch, just, you know, like I'm into a lot of rock and, you know, things like that, different stuff, you know, not just hip hop. So yeah, but definitely a heavy hip hop crossover. That was definitely the big influence for myself, you know, on that side of things. So yeah.
And do you think that had the same effect for the rest of the scene here in Christchurch?
Yeah, I do think so. I think majority, if not all of us that are or into the scene here are from a hip hop background. There's probably a couple that might have more of a rock or punk maybe background to it, but it's definitely more hip hop based for sure.
And in terms of like the principles of graffiti, you know, when you kind of first started writing, what were some fundamental kind of beliefs that you had about graph? Were you like, I need a bomb, I need to get up and I need to catch tags everywhere, or was it more about the kind of art side? You know, like I actually want to do, you know, some really good quality work.
It felt like I always wanted to be an artist, but I don't think that was the core motivation at the beginning. It was just more the whole, you know, getting your name up, you know, people recognizing it, getting a bit of fame from that, you know, hearing your name being said, I guess, you know, out in certain circles. It's just, yeah. I guess that's kind of always the core structure and foundation of it all, you know. It's just the tag and getting that up, and then it's just a buzz in itself, getting it up, and then it being said and spoken of, you know, and then other people, you meet other people and they're like, oh, you write that? Oh shit, you know, and you get the same reaction back and forth. So yeah, it's always a good starting point. I think it's just motivation, really. It's just
what type of brands of paint were you using?
Yeah, man, just whatever we could get our hands on, really. Like man, like the warehouse jazz cans were a big starting point, and then after that the Kmart price brand paint. Did you
No, I've never seen that.
Yeah, no. So Kmart had a whole brand of its own. This whole spray paint, full size cans, not the short ones like the jazz cans, but they were male cans. So but yeah, it was really good paint for what it was. It was cheap as, and yeah, it was pretty sweet. So yeah, that was a big starting point. There was also all like the plastic coats and you know, spray coats and Dulux and all that, but yeah, solidly the warehouse jazz can and the price brand. You
know, I've spoken about this with a number of the other artists in the previous episodes. Was racking kind of part of that culture here in Christchurch?
Yeah, a little bit more at the beginning, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm not too sure about the warehouse stuff, but yeah, a lot of the plastic coats and stuff, yeah, that would happen with that a bit. So yeah, for sure. I think it's just that whole generation as well, you know, like we're from that generation where our generation or the generation before us, that was how it was done, you know, like if you weren't doing that, then that you weren't writing, you know, you shouldn't be writing. So yeah. You know, yeah. That wasn't always the way for myself, I guess. But
sure.
That's, definitely elements around that.
And so what year was the earthquakes here in Christchurch?
2010 was the first one in September.
Was that the first major one?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was the first major one. That was like 4:30 in the morning, but it was the February one the next year, 2011. That was the big one that time. Yeah.
So we're obviously fast forwarding a little bit, but in 2010, you know, for the viewers that are listening in and are not aware of what happened in 2010, there was a fairly significant earthquake that really impacted the city. Yeah, it basically fucked up a lot of the infrastructure. And did that earthquake or the series of earthquakes affect the graffiti scene here?
Yeah, it definitely did affect us. You know, like I think in a weird way, it was quite a bit of a silver lining in a weird sense. Like pre-quake, because you got to, like, Christchurch is a really conservative city. It was before the quakes. It's less so now, but it still has that, you know, feel in some places. So so pre-quakes graffiti was just not accepted in any fashion or form. It was just definitely frowned upon, to be polite about it. And but it wasn't until after the quakes, really, when after the February one in 2011, lots of buildings came down, and so there was just heaps of empty spaces and empty lots and things around, and people like myself and Icarus and you know, a couple of others, we just took it upon ourselves, and we just went out with our own paint and just painted these walls, and purely for the love of, you know, painting and getting out there and trying to beautify it a bit better, I guess. You know, like, one thing I said a lot at that time period was how it didn't matter whether you loved or hated graffiti or what we were doing, but it was a distraction from the destruction, from trying to remember what building was there, you know, or anything like that. You were distracted by the mural itself. You weren't thinking of the demolition and the earthquake and the damage. You know, you were given a distraction of some sort. And luckily for us, the city loved it. You know, the community and the city and the people all loved it, and they just picked it up and ran with it. You know, so it's it's become quite a big part of the city now. So.
Kind of during that period of time, post-quake, people like George and Jan came along and did quite a lot of projects.
For sure, yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about your involvement with all those things and what that is? Yeah,
there was a whole heap of different projects originally. Like there was like some the art beat ones that me and Icarus and Ymca were involved with, and that was just a collective of a whole bunch of different genres of artists. So there was photographers and fine artists and performance artists and everything, and we kind of just banded together, and we just put on like this event over, I think it was over the summer breaks for a couple of years, and that was just purely to draw people back into the city centre. And so during one of those art beat functions, me and Icarus were painting this Pinocchio production. We were painting it right in Casual Mall. We could throw a stone and hit the Bridge of Remembrance with it, and we just laughed at ourselves about how pre-quake there's no way we'd be painting a production right in the city centre like that. And at that stage we were doing it for the city centre, you know, as a whole arts program, which was amazing. And these billboards got put on. They were panels that we painted, but they got put on billboards that were above the Restart Container Mall. And while we were painting those is when we met George. So he came along and he just he had ideas of what he was planning to do, and so we touched base, and he just quite the magician. Like just he said he said he was going to do something, and that was cool, and we were like, we'll help out whenever we can. And then we met him again, and he was all like, so we've got a venue, we think, we'll get back to you. And then he came back and was like, I think we've got the museum, and we're like mentally thinking, bullshit, you crazy old boy. But he was pretty confident about it, and then even he hollered and was like, we're gonna go through, you want to come through, we're gonna walk through the museum, and they're going to show us around and where we want things to be. And like, I remember, me and Icarus as well were there walking through like, this isn't happening. Like, this is crazy. Like, there's, like I say this quite often too, but there's literally pieces in that museum that, like, original museum type pieces, not graffiti pieces, but sculptures and things that are in the exact same position as they were when I went through that in primary school in my yearly trip, you know. So to be in there and painting it like that was crazy, you know. And then obviously that steamrolled, and he had 2 more other events after that as well. So it ended up being quite a city for it, you know. It was pretty amazing. Had amazing people come through and everything, you know, international and national. So
what actually happened in terms of the exhibitions there?
It was amazing. There was like there was external walls which artists were given to paint, but there was also internal walls that artists were given to paint as well. And then there was also like he kind of just recreated a bunch of things. Like there was one, he kind of recreated this whole street scene area with shops and everything like that, and then fake walls coming off that. And so that's where the installation of the buildings and everything. And then off down the side there was like a laneway which they created, and like George and Shannon's thought process behind it is they wanted it to be like a Melbourne laneway, but in a Christchurch manner. And so me and Icarus took that on, so we co-curated that. And so what we did is we kind of just ran with the whole, we'll do it as the generations of Christchurch, so of Christchurch graffiti. So we started off with a blank alleyway, which was amazing, and then we got in there right early and doing like rock slogans and band names, Pantera, and things like that. And that was really, really cool. And it was funny because we got the staff from the museum and George and Shannon and them were like, oh yeah, here, come write whatever you like on the walls, and they did all that, and that was cool. But yeah, it was funny. So as we got through each decade, it kind of, so the compliments were cool, they were happy with it at first, and then it was all right. And then we got into the 90s and bang on Christchurch City in the 90s and stuff. In 2000s, there was quite a big skinhead, scene here. So we allowed that to be in part of it, because obviously having that scene in Christchurch, there was a lot of SWAT stickers around.
Wow. That
type of thing. Yeah. So we obviously, myself being Māori and Icarus being Asian, we're not supporters of that, but to keep true to the Christchurch scene, we put those in the layers of the generation, but no, the museum were not happy with those, so they said they had to go, and they were going to go anyway, just as time went on throughout the generations, and then the mid-90s we're doing all our old school tags, so we were recreating our tags and pieces of youth. And so that was when the compliments stopped. They were a bit shocked and appalled. I think they didn't know what was going to happen, and so it wasn't until we got into the next decade and the decade after where they really started to see it all come together. So that was a really amazing one.
So then after the museum, I know that the whole project shifted to the Ymca, and you guys obviously continued, your involvement with that. Could you tell me kind of what occurred with that?
Same thing again. It was external walls and internal installation spaces, so which was really, really amazing. We're given some good opportunities from Jordan and Shannon and them to create some amazingness in there. So for the first room that me and Icarus did was a Dci room, and we painted. It was like a really tiny, funny little nooky room, but we created like it was a concrete room that had been smashed apart, so the roof was blown off it, but all the walls had graffiti pieces on it, and the floor had cracked away as well. And where the roof had blown off, we did a galaxy all up in the sky, and we ended up doing it in the floors and in the walls as well. And then I did photorealistic portraits of all the crew members in there, so myself, Icarus, Ymca and Dci. And then we went and put UV paint around on the galaxy stuff, and so we played it around with the light, so we made it change from a UV light into a normal light situation. So it would go from the room being the broken graffiti room with the galaxy around it, and then it would switch to the UV light, and then all the actual galaxy would pop and shine off the UV paint. So it was pretty mean. It was one of those situations where, because when you use UV paint in those situations, it can either be really good or just really whack, and so it paid off. We did really, really good. So yeah. And then the year after that, we got a bigger room in, and it was me, Icarus and Ymca, and we recreated like a demolition abandoned area. So so we recreated this whole, like, you walked into an office space area and you came out into a small alleyway and then out into like a broken building, and then and then we had like lampposts and power lines and all this old stuff. So it was really, really amazing. In fact, the weird thing is probably one of the best parts for myself was I'm underneath the lamppost. I recreated like this giant pile of bird crap, and if anybody out there knows, if you've been in abandoned buildings, that there's bird crap piled up knee high in places, so I recreated that just to give that kind of feel and homeliness to our sort. So and the funny thing is, like, there was a lot of comments from actual writers who love that point, so that was fun.
That's awesome, man. And so kind of looking back at some of those experiences and projects, how do you think that's kind of helped the the scene here.
Yeah, no, I think it has really pushed it. It's really put it in a positive light. It's made people kind of recognize it for the art form that it actually is, especially having such big, large names like Seth and Tilt and others coming through, like, who are internationally known, let alone guys like yourselves, who are the same. So it's just, it's just really pushed it. So it's really made it in a positive light now. It's not looked at as so negatively, the art form in itself. It is seen as an actual art form because of that, I think.
So other than Christchurch, have you had many opportunities to take your art kind of elsewhere outside of Christchurch and travel?
Yeah, mainly all New Zealand based. So but all over the show, like Queenstown, Wanaka, Timaru, and upwards as well, So obviously to Auckland with yourselves, and so all over the show really. Yeah, no, it's pretty good. Nelson, Napier.
Any plans on doing some more international travel outside of New Zealand?
Yeah, I would. Like it would be something good to look at. Look more into, because I was lucky enough to go to Nepal recently due to a work. It was a t-shirt, limited edition t-shirt design that I did, which got me sent over there, which was pretty amazing. Like I didn't get to paint anything over there, but to actually be able to take that mission off the back of a design, it was pretty amazing.
Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I did a limited edition t-shirt design for Kathmandu, the clothing brand, and so as part of they are doing a limited edition artist series, and I was the second artist within that to do that for them. And that was their option. They said obviously they could just pay me normally like they would anyone else, but there was this option. It just so happened to be that year was the 65th anniversary of Sir Edmund Hillary reaching the peak of Mount Everest. So they had this whole trek to Mount Everest base camp already lined up and everything, and so I got to go along on that. It was amazing. So spent 19 days in Nepal trekking to the base camp of Mount Everest, and
Did you make it?
Yeah, there and back. It was all good. Yeah. Like I don't want to say it was easy, because it definitely wasn't easy, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, I guess, it was pretty amazing, all right?
Must have been all that Kathmandu gear kept
you
warm.
Well, exactly, definitely felt like a Westerner, all up in there with all this flash gear, and there's all these old or young people just in, nothing, man. Like the people there are just so tough, dude,
I guess moving on to the next set of questions, which is really a little more about your influences, style, and inspiration. Firstly, how would you describe your graffiti lettering style, and how has it evolved?
Yeah, my lettering style is kind of that whole chisel tip shape, calligraphy type, line type thing. I kind of have that repetition going on, I think, in my letter form. So. Yeah. Not so calligraphy, but just that whole swooping motion, I think growing up in the 90s, Old English writing was the big thing, gangster tats and all that, and all the rap vids and everything. So I did a lot of that, on walls and things like that. So I kind of think just that whole kind of shape and form really did influence me a lot, I think. Just the whole, I think I do, use that quite a bit actually. Even just not like if you see my piece, you wouldn't think it's a calligraphy type thing.
Well, you see the strokes, but they're kind of fattened, and some bits are thicker and some bits are skinny, right?
Yeah, and it kind of comes to points type thing, it's, and the points kind of sway off on each end.
And in terms of the working process of actually creating a piece, is it normally quite freestyled or improvised, or do you normally, sketch everything out and, you got to match everything to the T to the sketch?
I haven't used a sketch for a piece for quite a few years now, and I just kind of just freestyle it, just go with the flow, kind of just whatever movements are happening and whatever I think is working, I'll just do a sketch, and if it's a bit misshapen, just keep adjusting the sketch and everything. But I just kind of, if I'm doing lettering, I just flow it.
And so after painting pieces for so many years now, are you quite happy with that style? Or is there still, space to push it further?
There's always space to push it, I think. I'm happy with how it turns out majority of the time, I think. But I always feel there's always room for improvement. I always I think when I try and paint, I'm always trying to paint better than I did the previous time I painted. Whether I succeed at that, whether it is better or not, as long as I'm trying to progress, I think is the main thing. So as long as I'm pushing forward and trying to develop more. But I think my lettering still has more to go. I think I can still push that.
Is the characters also freestyled?
No. My characters are depending on what style I'm doing them, but they're all pretty much either from a photo, if it's photorealistic, or it's from a comic book of some sort, because a lot of my other characters are quite cartoony. I'm quite nostalgic with that Hong Kong Fooey and things like that, so Magilla Gorilla. Haven't done them yet, but I'm planning it.
So what other art forms are you interested in outside of graffiti?
Figure drawing. I quite like a lot of figure drawing, charcoal and that type of thing. Sculpture is also, I like what can be done with sculpting and that type of thing. I think I like just all because I've played around with creating little figurines and that type of thing, because I'm a big toy fiend as well, and all that type of aspect. So
what motivates you to paint your photorealistic work?
Just trying to push my skill level, trying to just being able to create something that looks like a photo from spray can work. I found that was the first thing that kind of really pushed me in that direction, just because I've always been about trying to create or trying to have a certain skill level in what I do. That is kind of what pushed me into the photorealism. There's definitely a certain level of can control and skill level involved with being able to paint that way, and that's kind of where I went with that. I've always, I just like that type of aspect of it.
And what type of subject matter do you like painting the most, especially when you're painting your photorealistic work?
Anything really. I really like the depth perception aspect of things. So if there's something in the foreground that's in detail and it gets blurrier as it goes further in the distance, I really like that effect. It looks really impressive and really effective. So I guess anything in that kind of fashion.
In terms of the technical aspects of actually creating a photorealistic piece of work, what type of caps do you use?
Generally, I pretty much, as a standard, I pretty much only really have the Ghetto Blaster, the New York, your Banana Skinnies, and Grey Dots. Really, that's probably my 4 main ones, and the Blue Cyclones, yeah.
And before you kind of mentioned that your nationality is you got a Māori background. Does your cultural background have any influence on any of the art that you create?
I think it's pretty separate, really. I don't really add too much of my culture within my paintings unless I'm painting something specific to that culture, like a taiaha or someone with tamuk or something like that. But I don't specifically put something in that is Māori just because it's Māori, or because I'm Māori. It's just
why not?
It's just not where I'm at. I don't think, I am Māori and I'm proud to be Māori and I'm not ashamed of it, but I don't need to be painting in that fashion to prove or push that, or that's not my agenda. My art form's an art form in itself, separate to being Māori. I think I've definitely painted more Asian themed things than Māori things, I would think, and it's just because I think it's because of that. I grew up on Bruce Lee and Kung Fu Kids and random stuff like that, so and anime and manga, of course.
Who would you say are your top 3 influences on your graffiti from Christchurch?
Icarus, Jungle and Dci. Well, yes.
And for what reasons are those your top 3?
Yep. Icarus, because he's just been going at it for ages, and his stuff is clean, it's solid. He's got a solid following. He's got his shit on lock, and he knows what he's doing, and he knows how to do it, and he's really good at that. Dci, because he's just real diverse. He's really good at almost pretty much everything, really. He's quite the all-rounder. So he's really influential in that way. He helps push, or it did anyway when he was here. Helped push my skill level in that fashion towards the photorealism and everything. He was actually the first person that showed me some photorealistic graffiti. It was in a Source mag or something, and it was some acclaim stuff, and I didn't even know it was painted, so but I think I said jungle before, and I would say that in the sense because he was such a legend, but when I think about it, I think Lurk's probably a better aspect on that, just because he's been going for longer with everything, like pieces up in the, I remember seeing the UAC stuff when I was young, and he would have been young too, and getting up and doing proper full color pieces and outlines and fills and everything, and it was just I remember spinning out and just thinking, how are you doing this there, so that'll be my three from Christchurch that I think are the most influential.
Are there any international writers that have influenced you?
Yeah, man, like I said, McLean before, their skill level has been, from when I first saw that stuff, that was amazing, and Tilt's always been a big fan since the Coke Destroys doco, so but even pre all that, I've got a solid memory of the Tats crew into the Graffiti Masters production that they did. And I just because I remember finding that, because I remember the whole being young and painting and not even painting, trying to paint, and then I remember finding that Source magazine, and it had that in the back of it, the Tats into Graffiti Masters production, and if you just don't know it, it's got a portrait of Bruce Lee from that movie in the middle, and all the Tats crew's pieces are around him, and each piece is holding, one's got a ninja star, the other's got a scythe or an nunchaku or something. So I remember seeing that and thinking, whoa, that's where I want to get to, and that is I think that kind of helped me at least push in that production direction, so those are definitely some things that definitely stick in my mind.
I know that we're not talking about productions at the moment, but I feel like productions are such an important kind of quality to graffiti. It's like a real, it's actually quite a big team building.
Definitely, man. There's a whole vibe to it, there's definitely, good crew, team building, like you said, banter, entertainment, there's just, there's just more to it, there's, like you said, there's multiple people working on the same production, on the same pieces, and just trying to, push.
There's a lot of younger writers coming up now. How would you suggest to them, and for yourself, in the past, how to take influence without biting?
I kind of think there's a certain point, when you're starting off, when you're early, where it's hard not to bite. You're at a point where you don't know what you're doing, so you're just trying to copy somebody else's, even if it's their exact same piece or something. You're just copying to an extent. So I guess at that stage, when you're just trying to learn your own thing, trying to find footing, I guess. But there's just got to be a point where you can just develop your own thing, I think. It's a hard one, I guess, just even personally thinking back, and at the beginning of the whole Christchurch scene, there was a point there when I could see Christchurch was getting its own kind of style, and it was definitely a mash between a ex-jungle deciphery lurkishness type thing, and it was really cool to see. But I think the internet crushed that whole independence of that, where there were specific styles to certain areas, I think. So I think the internet's kind of made that a bit harder, I think, with the whole, it is so easy to just find somebody else's piece online and full on just take that whole style or something like that. So if you're at the beginning, just do it. You're all right. Just as long as you're not trying to claim that as yours, you're not on walls, promoting that as you. If you're just using it to build your skill level up, then I don't see the harm in that to an extent. Just as long as you're not trying to actually claim that as you, that's that. I guess it's easier for people to look back and see what people have done and trying to recreate that instead of thinking forward and pushing on, I guess. So
What's the kind of best advice that you've been given about graffiti?
Not really. I think the best advice that I've taken upon myself is to just do it. Because when I was younger, growing up, it was one of those art forms, especially at pre-Quake Christchurch, it was just really negative, and people just didn't really see it going anywhere, and so I think, because that's the thing, for myself, I didn't start doing graffiti to become this artist that I am now. Even though I always wanted to be an artist, I was just painting for the love of painting. And it wasn't to be able to paint photorealistically, it was just to paint letters and pieces with my friends, And so I think as long as you are just doing what you do for the love of you and your progression, if that's what you're trying to do, then that's all it really is, and that's all it needs to be, And if you're lucky enough for that to grow into something bigger and better and more, then that's amazing, But I think for myself, that wasn't, even though I wanted to be an artist, that wasn't the overall goal. I was just trying to paint for the love of painting, and I think just by luck of circumstance, skill and everything, and a few other things like that, it's just happened to come out this way, I think so.
Do you actually make art full-time now?
Yeah, full-time artist, so yeah.
What does a full-time artist actually mean?
Yeah, so I do large-scale commissions and work like that, and for businesses and private commissions, and it pays my bills, really. It pays the bills, and it feeds the pets and everything like that. So yeah.
And so how long has it actually taken you to get to this point?
I mean, like I said before, it's taken me years to get my own skill level up to a certain standard that's acceptable for people to actually want to be paying for. There's that element to it, but a big part of it is my wife Emma, actually. Like she's the brains behind of everything. She's the first point of contact that people have usually, and potentially usually the last point of contact. She's she's definitely a big reason of why I am where I am in this position currently, she's really pushed me. She's really set a good foundation with things as well. She's got the business degree from Canterbury Uni, so she knows what she's up to, and has really just helped push me in the right direction, I believe, too. So yeah.
Referring to a specific project of yours, especially the wall in Manchester Street, one of our audience members have asked, when you're working on such a large scale, how do you manage to kind of navigate the perspective and get the scale of your artwork correct when it's so big?
I've tried a few different techniques over the years. Like I've tried transparent paper, where I've printed the photo on the transparent paper. So I'll start my sketch on the wall, and then I can look through the transparent paper at the wall to see if things are lining up. And so, a few other things like that. But essentially, I pretty much just use a grid pattern format type thing. So if you imagine those kids colouring in books or drawing books, and there'd be a small image with like 9 squares, and there was an image in that, and then there was a blank page with the blank 9 squares, and so you just had to copy the small one into the large one, and you just went square by square. And so I tried that a lot as a kid, and I really think that kind of pushed me into just getting perspective correct in that sense, like trying to look at the design and trying to see how it goes, whatever I'm painting, it goes up and to the left on that certain angle to this certain point, and just trying to just do it that way. But essentially it is just a grid pattern technique.
Do you prefer painting those larger walls?
It all really depends on the subject matter, I think, as well. Like if I've got it's a hard one, but I think like if it's a nice big wall and I'm getting to paint freely whatever I'm wanting to create, then I'll be really happy with that. Like I love the challenge in the big walls, and just the satisfaction of being able to paint something like that or finishing something like that. But there's just a whole different level of satisfaction, I guess, to a smaller just jamming a piece thing, like because large scale mural work like that, there's days on end, potentially, weeks even, if depending on the size. And so there's just more stress involved with that, or frustration at least, where if you're just jamming, and you just have, you can have a good day or you can have a bad day painting, but you're still just jamming, and so yeah.
Moving on to our last set of questions, which is really about your opinions about certain things.
Yep.
How active are you currently in painting graffiti?
Man, I'm not very active at all these days. It's a little sad, really, but it is what it is. I think, like at this point, I'm a full-time artist, and
Does the commission work normally take precedent over just jamming out with your friends?
potentially so, because it is the bill paying. It pays my bills, so I need to get work in constantly to make sure we're ahead of everything like that. So to an extent it does, but that's only at a more base work level type thing where but I do wish I could be painting more. I wish I had more free time to just be jamming. It is what it is, and I'm not complaining. If there's any issues that I have with any complaints, that's probably it. I just don't get to paint freely as much as I would like to, but there's time for that in the future.
What kind of keeps you interested in graffiti after all these years?
Just seeing everyone develop, seeing people I know progress, seeing people that I don't even know but like their work, like just seeing the scene grow.
And if there were some up and coming writers that wanted to paint with you or even learn from you, would you be interested in painting with them and being a mentor?
Yeah, for sure. We're not shy from doing that type of thing. We do a lot of workshops and all that type of things, and just general jams with cats who are in town or if they're about, so if the time's free, if I can get there, I will for sure, so that's always an option.
And so what do you actually think of the graffiti scene here in Christchurch at the moment?
Yeah, it's doing better, I think. There was a while there when a lot of writers had left, and so there wasn't a lot of writers left in town, so there wasn't a lot of activity happening. There was a stage where I'm sure me and Icarus had these conversations where we need to have more younger up and coming people in the scene, because otherwise the scene will just die off with us, because the scene has been good at times, so for it to, and it hasn't, but if that was the sad state of affairs where we were the last, we couldn't hand off whatever knowledge we had to any up and comers, or even just the history of Christchurch graffiti that needs to be passed on and things like that, so no, the scene is good now. There's other people up and writing, there's younger peeps doing things. It's good to see actual active writers, so yeah.
And whose responsibility is that to pass on that knowledge?
Yeah, well, I think it's the people with the knowledge, really, and that's because, it has to be us, because we are the ones with that knowledge. If nobody else is going to be handing that across, then it's just going to get lost, no one's going to know it, nobody else knows to hand it down type thing, so it's upon us, it's upon them if they want to learn as well, so that's why the workshops are always pretty cool in that sense, so
And what do you think about people that hold off on sharing that knowledge?
It's just part of that graffiti attitude to an extent, it's that whole, fuck you, you're biting type thing, it's mine, I'm gonna hold on to this. So I get it, I do get it, so and if that's fine, if you have that knowledge and you don't want to share that in that aspect, whether it's how you paint, what you paint and whatever like that, then that's fine. But I think when it's a bigger thing, when it's graffiti history, then that knowledge has to be shared, or it will just get lost.
Me painting graffiti, that's me doing the practice. Me running a workshop tomorrow, me creating a web series, that's me preaching. That's what I see what I'm doing,
sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So in general, how do you think we could help grow the overall graffiti scene in New Zealand?
Well, like you said, man, these workshops and things like that, just being able to freely give advice, let people know that, because a lot of, I guess graffiti and graffiti artists have quite a hard-lined, or people think they are quite hard-lined, but, a fair amount of us are just free going, man. One of the weirdest things that quite a lot of interviews I've done, and Chris, we've both had this, people say, you're quite eloquent. And I was like, well, of course I am,
I'm not a scumbag.
I know grammar, I can speak English, I can conversate and hold a conversation, and and that's the weird thing. I think people just don't expect that to an extent, they do just expect some sort of hoary, with broken grammar, but it's just,
Another thing about, what we're kind of doing here is, obviously this episode's going to go onto the internet, so what do you see as the pros and cons of the internet and social media and its impact on graffiti?
The internet has been good in that sense where like you can just access so much style and so much, info just at the tip of your fingers, it's all just there, you don't, you can just access everything from caps to cans to pens to how to paint and, tutorials and everything like that. So it's good in that aspect where it's more readily available, but it kind of does, to an extent it takes away from just the core of graffiti where, you had to be in that place, you had to see that piece, you had to be walking past that tag, you couldn't just tap and there everything is, so I think it has its pros and cons. Like, it's good because it's so diverse and there's so many options for people these days. But yeah, it also has its negative effects as well. I think it can be really distracting as well in some aspects, so yeah.
And where do you see graffiti going in the next 10 years? Do you think that writers will just continue doing the same thing, or do you think they'll start breaking some new ground and kind of bridging into other areas of art?
I think there's always movement for progression. I think people are always going to be looking forward and trying to look for the next step or the next movement or the next angle or position that they want to take their work. Yeah, it's just hard to be stagnant, repeating the same thing, so on and so on. Like even Van Gogh and every other artist like that, you can see their painting styles change throughout the years and everything like that. So I think it's just a natural form. I think people just grow as they grow, their art form grows, their influences change, what they prefer and what they like is changing, what they're trying to create. So yeah, I always think there's options to go everywhere and anywhere really, so.
Are there any writers in Christchurch at the moment that kind of have your attention?
If I'm counting out my crew and anybody else that I've already previously just mentioned, I would actually say Wex, because he's actually getting up. He's doing.
He's putting in work.
He's putting in work. It's good to see. It's good to see. It's It's good to see.
He's doing characters and all.
Yeah. Pieces in full color pieces and everything. So yeah, it's mean. That's mean.
What's 3 bits of advice that you would leave with us for any up and coming writers now?
Yeah, so the first one would just be, just do it, don't be afraid of what other people are going to think or anything like that. Just do what you want to do. Don't be afraid. Yeah, so my second one would be, don't be afraid of other people's opinions of you or your art form or what you're trying to create. And thirdly would just be, keep trying to progress, trying to, even if you're not trying to get your skill level or whatever, if you're up or whatever, as long as you are trying to develop your lettering or at least your can control, or making sure you've got clean lines or just a nice throw wheel tag, just keep pushing.
Awesome, man. And our last question, do you have any major projects coming up, or are you working on anything at the moment?
Currently I'm doing a bunch of commissions for Rolleston Youth Prison, so so that's quite a big job. I'm out there doing quite a lot of, there's 5 different units, so in there with a whole bunch of builders and painters and glaziers as well, doing each unit as we go through. So that's probably it's a good project in the sense where I have a certain amount of free reign to it or what I get to paint, but in the same aspect it's it's for the youth prisoners, so it's somewhat positive and uplifting, but it's it's quite a privilege in itself to be able to be let into a place like that, to be able to create things like this for them. So yeah, that's the current thing that's keeping me going. And I just finished some designs and some panels for Christchurch Airport, which they're going to be using for reusable tote bags and things like that. So that was a cool one I've just finished as well. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Sounds like some really awesome projects happening. All right, well, to wrap up, we're just going to head on to the rapid fire questions. All right, these are essentially just 1-word answers. So first one is quality or quantity?
Quality.
Style or technique?
Technique? No, style. Yeah.
Color or chrome?
Oh man. I miss Chrome, so I'm gonna say Chrome. Yeah.
Bombing or productions?
Productions for myself, I think, and we need to get back to that.
Marvel or DC?
Oh man, you asked me this when I was up for form, and I'm actually an Image comic. You know, Spawn, dude. Spawn's
Oh,
the
Spawn.
man.
Yeah.
He's my dude.
True. Favorite cartoon?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with Spawn because he's my favorite character. He's the man. Yeah.
Cool. And any shout outs you'd like to make?
Yeah. I'll start off with my wife. Love you, baby. And to my crew, X, Decipher, Jungle, Yikes. Yeah, whānau, family, friends, shout outs to all. So, yeah. And to you, bro. Shot for having me.
All good, bro. So thank you so much, Wongi, for your time. We really appreciate your perspective, knowledge, and insight around your practice and thoughts around the graffiti culture. You've obviously provided an incredible resource for all the writers and aspiring artists, up-and-coming artists in New Zealand and overseas. I hope that the video has been insightful, inspiring, and educative for everybody that's just watched and listened. If you would like to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel and watch some of the earlier episodes, because each episode has quite a lot of different perspectives around graffiti. Make sure to drop us a like, share, and comment below, and leave us a bit of feedback and give us some recommendations on how we can improve the series for future episodes. Thanks.